Thanks for watching this video. I wanted to talk about something which I was asked many times on my other YouTube videos, and it is about housing here in Sweden. It's a big topic for people who just moved to Sweden, and I can understand it's not very transparent and a bit complicated, maybe not as easy as in other countries. So yeah, in today's video, I wanted to talk a little bit about the housing situation in Sweden and how you find rental properties, what kind of is the best to do here in Sweden in regards to housing. So welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Julie. I'm originally from Germany. I used to live in the UK in London about 10 years, and then almost 3 months ago, I moved to Stockholm in Sweden. So my journey is still very, very new, but I thought it would be really interesting to see someone who just moved to Sweden. What are the challenges? What are the joys? Kind of documenting a new life here in Sweden. And I'm sure it will be very interesting to see also what I'm up to in like 2 years. So make sure to subscribe. Okay, first of all, I wanted to talk a little bit about the housing situation here in Sweden. Why is it so difficult to find actually housing? When I started my research before I moved to Sweden, I could see in forums and Facebook groups that a lot of people struggled with finding housing. So that was a little concern, but it obviously didn't hold me back from moving to Sweden. But I haven't really found any videos talking about it in more detail, so that's why I'm doing this video today. So there's a little bit of a housing shortage in Sweden, especially in the biggest cities like Stockholm. There's just not enough flats and houses for the amount of people who live here or who want to move here. But to be quite fair to everyone, there is a system in place, and this system requires you to queue. That's kind of like the standard here. And normally when you're born here, you kind of put yourself on the list, or maybe your parents put you on the list. So by the time you need a flat to live in, you're quite at the top of the list. And these flats are actually not that expensive, and that is the really positive thing about it. That's why everyone wants to do it, putting themselves on the list, because eventually they get a flat and don't pay too much rent. I found this option is not so much for people who want to move to Sweden, expats, because the list can last quite a long time. So what other options do people have then when they move to Sweden? So there's something called first-hand and second-hand rentals here in Sweden. And that basically means either you rent from a landlord, so someone who owns the property, or you rent from someone who is actually a renter themselves. And both options are definitely more expensive than, being on the list and getting a flat from the government. And also there are not that many options. I often see in like these Facebook groups or forums I mentioned earlier that people are looking for a flat or house and they just can't find any. So before I go into more details about these first and second-hand rentals, I wanted to talk about my personal journey and tell you how we as a family started out when we moved here in Sweden on the 1st of June. So the first step for us was to actually get an Airbnb. My partner's work actually offered us a hotel for the first month or maybe the second month, but we thought it's not very convenient to kind of have just one room with a toddler. So we asked if it's okay to have an Airbnb, and we kind of rented a townhouse where my daughter had her own room, so we could have our peaceful evenings. The first one actually we found got cancelled because they decided not to do it because of COVID. So obviously there are special times at the moment. Still COVID is going on. It has some restrictions and people are, different for good reasons. But eventually we found a nice place and we booked it for 1 month. Everything went really smooth and we moved in. I think actually summer is not a bad time to move because a lot of Swedes are spending their summers in their summer houses, so they can rent out their flats or houses here in Stockholm or in any other cities. So I thought that was actually quite convenient. You will see in some other videos that I did mention that maybe summer is not the best time to move in terms of bureaucracy, but when it comes to get an Airbnb, it's a good time. We actually tried before we moved to Sweden to rent a place. We have friends here and they were actually so kind to look at 2 rental properties for us. But it was kind of like destiny that these 2 rental properties fell through. One family wanted to move to Spain and then it didn't happen, so they didn't want to rent out their house anymore. And the second one actually decided to sell the house rather than rent it to another family. I don't know if it would have been possible to rent it, you know. At the end, I would say it's so much harder to try to rent something before you actually come and move to Sweden. Well, and we were also quite lucky. Although we found something in the first month, we couldn't move in straight away. So we had to rent another month, and we asked our Airbnb host if that is possible. And he was really, really kind and let us stay another month in his townhouse. And I actually got another question about if you could maybe stay in an Airbnb as long as possible and then make it your address for your immigration registration. And I would say talk to your host, your Airbnb host for sure. Be very transparent and open and explain the situation and that you would like to use their address. From a bureaucracy point of view, it's definitely possible. We actually used our friend's address. So we had a little bit of an advantage that we already knew someone here in Stockholm. But yeah, you can actually ask your host if it is okay, because later on you can still change it and it shouldn't be a problem. But you know, you never know, some Airbnb hosts just don't like it. So you really have to make sure they're okay with it, because stuff will be sent to their address as well eventually, and they need to tell you that something arrived if it happens that you don't live there anymore, because the process can be very long. So yeah, if it's not your Airbnb, maybe you can find someone here in Sweden you trust and maybe where you can basically have an address in case you haven't found like a more permanent address. So yeah, let's talk a little bit about house hunting itself. So I mentioned I actually started before we moved to Sweden and that didn't work out. So once we moved to Sweden, I was like house hunting. I said in one of my previous videos that we wanted to have a house rather than an apartment, but you know, it's up to you what you're looking for. Both things are available on some websites I'm going through in a second. But one thing I actually read a lot in these Facebook groups was some scam stories. So I was quite shocked that this is actually possible here. Not even in London I have heard these kind of scams, or you know, where was alerted to be very careful. But here, this is one of the things people talked about, and there were quite a few who actually told their personal scam story. So it definitely happened to people. So there are a few warning signs. There's some obvious ones where, you know, if you're getting pressured into paying a deposit straight away, especially like into like a foreign bank account, then, you know, your alarm bells should ring. But I even read stories where things looked quite legit. They looked at the flat and then were asked, you know, to transfer the deposit, even got the keys. And then when they actually arrived at their new rental property, the key didn't fit. So yeah, I feel that is quite crazy, to be honest, that this is even possible and that there's almost nothing you can do. I mean, it's still going on. Obviously, not much has happened to prevent that. Yeah, I just wanted to put that out here. At the end of the day, I kind of used 2 websites, maybe 3, although the third one was quite similar to one of the others with like the same rental properties. But yeah, both of them I think require some fees, you know, for like protection, and one is proper agency, you know, handling things. We do pay a little bit of money, but at the end of the day we have, you know, it's quite legit. There was no way that this could be a scam. So let's have a look at the websites very quickly here on my computer. I show you 2 websites which I thought were really, really good, and I found there actually was a lot of offer, although I have seen other people saying they couldn't find anything, but it really depends what you're looking for. Let's have a look. So yeah, here is the first website I actually wanted to show you, which is called Blocket Bostad. So this is one, you can see here a map already with all the properties. There's loads going on, and it is in Swedish. Normally I have a little sign up here in the bar where I can Google translate it. It's not here at the moment, but you know, I sometimes just copy pasted like the description to Google Translate later. So yeah, here you will just put in your kind of city or area you want to live in. I can put in here Stockholm and it shows me Stockholm. I later learned, you know, I saw this here, and outside here there's lots of properties as well, and you know, it's kind of very close to Stockholm. So either you can actually click on them to see, or you can find out what areas they are. For example, I found out Nacka Commune is also a nice area, which is further down here. And then you can have a look. You can obviously have a filter. I think here's the filter, what you're looking for. If you're looking for an apartment, with furniture and that kind of stuff. What else do we have here? Oh yeah, you can put in your price and how many rooms. So you can just put in your criteria and then look for whatever. And you can see there's lots of pictures. You click on one and then you can see, if you like it. Again, like it really depends what you're looking for. And then when you scroll down, you do have to look sometimes. Here it says it's available from the 1st of September until the 31st of January. So this is a very short-term one. So you have to look what what you want. After I show you the websites, I also want to talk a little bit further about why it is so hard to find like a rental property here in Sweden. But I just wanted to show you also the websites so you know where to go to. The second website I want to show you is called Samtrygg. And I personally found there my property. It works very similar. You can see that here it has 245 properties in Stockholm area. So you can also click on here and you can also zoom in. I think that's what I did a little bit as well, because you can see the price, you can see the area. I think they have a little bit less availability than Blocket Bostad. But yeah, you can just have a look here, see what it is like. Here 32 square meters, 1.5 rooms in Nacka for 11,500 krona. So it's pretty straightforward, and this one actually has an English website version, so you can have everything in English, which is quite convenient, obviously, for people who don't speak Swedish yet, like me. And then you can just have a look and see what is available. So it will just open. Here you can see it automatically open your new window, and then you can look at all the nice pictures and requirements. But you can see, well, this is available basically for like a year. And this one, Casa, is very similar to Blocket Bostad, and I had the feeling that actually most of the properties which are on Blocket Bostad are also on Casa. So I didn't bother too much to look on here because all the properties are also on Blocket Bostad. There are a few more, but I felt just most secure with those, from what I read, giving a review about these websites, how they feel comfortable and secure with these. So for me, it was enough to only look here and just find a property. And, as you know from my last video, we did find one. So I didn't have a big problem finding something, but as you know as well, we are paying quite a bit of money, so there's a massive compromise here. We had to take, paying a little bit of more money for a first-hand property. So yeah, one thing I wanted to mention here, it's pretty impossible to find something longer than a year, or maybe maximum 2 years. And that's the thing I haven't figured out in terms of like what is the law. What I have read is like, especially when there's a building with different apartments and you want to rent it out to someone, you have to get approval from the building board. And so this could be maybe quite stressful, or they don't always allow it for some reason. You also need to have like good reasons, for example, that you're going abroad. So it's not very straightforward, like for example in London, where you can just like maybe rent it out, although the second-hand rental is not a thing in London so much. It happens, but it's not very common. So people who move to Sweden first have a bit of a struggle to find a rental property. And then when they finally found something, it might be not available more than 6 months or 1 year. Also here we have the opportunity to stay 1 year. So we will see how it goes. We are expecting to move in a year, just because this is what we agreed with the landlord. And yeah, again, I haven't found out properly by law what the issue is. Maybe there's a lot of fees, the government is charging you for renting out your property longer than 6 months or a year, but I'm happy to dig deeper into that if that's something people are interested in. So again, we found our property on Samtrygg, the website, but we also pay a fee to the agency. I think this fee might be also a little bit higher because they're really managing everything. The family who rents out this house actually moved abroad and they want to come back, or if they don't come back, they might actually sell this property. So I think one thing which might be a bit trickier is to find a cheaper place. Although then again, I have heard from a few people, they're renting out a really small apartment in an area which is not very central, and I feel it's definitely cheaper than London. So everything is possible here in Sweden, but then again, it might not be for the long term. When it comes to rent prices, it's really hard to talk about this because it varies very, very much. It depends on how big, how many rooms you want, where in Stockholm it should be. The more central you go, in every city is the same, the more expensive it gets. But one thing I read and also experienced myself, the public transport is really, really good here in Stockholm. So it's actually not a problem to be a bit further outside of central London and to just commute into town if you wanted to for work or, for fun. It's not a big deal. I mean, I lived in the last 10 years in London. For me, it always at least took me 30-45 minutes to get anywhere. And obviously it was a bit further away, then there was nothing happening under an hour. So I feel Stockholm is obviously a little bit smaller and, a little bit more manageable. So yeah, again, it's really hard to tell you what good prices are. I would say it really depends on your budget, and like a thumb or rule is that you maybe spend 30 to 50% of your salary on rental property. And I know that some people already commented on my last video about the house tour as well, where I revealed how much we're actually paying in rent, that it was very expensive. And even I agree, and I'm not a Swede, but yeah, it has reasons, some of them which I talked about in this video as well. It is not that easy to find, a cheap rental property. But let me talk a little bit about areas here in Stockholm as well, because that was another question from someone who commented on my video. Thanks for the question. I tell you one thing, I give you a few areas which I actually saw people commenting about in these Facebook groups, or even like my friends said these are good areas. I tell you these areas, but at the same time I have to tell you that I personally wasn't really looking in these areas, because what I did was more, I was looking for the property to see what is out there, and then I looked where it was located. And before we even looked at the house, you can see the location, the public transport connection to, for example, my partner's work, which was important, and then just the connection to central London in general. And sometimes on Google Maps, you also see the area a little bit, which I find very, very handy to see at least, around the house, what it looks like. And then I also was looking at what is close there. Is there a supermarket close or any other maybe shops? So that was kind of important for me. But yeah, let's give you a few areas I gathered from other people with no guarantee that these areas are actually really good, because I don't have the personal experience. But yeah, one is Arsta, Hammarby Sjöden, Hammarby Sjöstad. I'm probably still not saying that properly. Södermalm, Gamla Enskede, Tallkrogen, Stureby, Björkhagen, Sickla, Stora Essingen, Äppelviken, and Alvik. So yeah, I just wrote that down, but I never really looked at it when I was looking for a rental property. So you can look them up if you want to. But yeah, when it comes to proper looking for areas, I just would look at the properties and then, visit the property, see if you like it, and then walk around a little bit in the area. I think you will quickly see if it's a good area or not. And then also I feel, despite other people saying maybe it's a bit dangerous, you know, you have not lived in London, so you find that Stockholm in general is quite safe. So there are very rare areas where it might not, you know, be super safe, but you will also see if that's an area you want to live in. I think everyone has a bit of a feeling, you know, if it's a safe area or not. You can also go there at night to really check it out and see if you feel safe, you know. It shouldn't be a problem to do that. Yeah, and then obviously when it comes to areas, maybe if you have older kids, then maybe it's important for you that they go to a certain school, maybe an international school, then maybe the area is already kind of determined for you. We were quite flexible, you know, my daughter is almost 3 years old, so we were looking for a preschool, a kindergarten, and it didn't really matter where it was. So we wanted just to move somewhere and then look around what's available there. So I wasn't very fussed about finding the perfect kindergarten. So I hope this video was a little bit helpful for you. If you have any further questions, please let me know down in the comments below, and I really try to answer any further questions I haven't maybe answered now in this video. Thanks so much for watching till the end. Have a great day and stay safe. Hej då!